This is News Conference Extra with Conan Nolan.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference Extra, a special segment of Today in LA Weekend. Joining us from Washington is Chuck Todd, host of Meet the Press, which airs every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock here on NBC4. So, Chuck, we talked about this a little bit last week, but it's worth repeating that the period we're about to enter has far more peril to it, to the leadership out of Washington, Sacramento, and City Hall than the first 3 weeks of stay at home. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, I think so. I think right now the toughest job in America is being a mayor or a governor, having to make the decision. And I've been using a steam valve metaphor today because I just feel like I get it. You know, in our NBC Wall Street Journal poll, Conan, that's coming out Sunday, 40% know somebody who's contracted the virus, but 60% haven't. And by the way, that number is growing on the 40. It was only 22% 3 weeks ago. So eventually it may get to 60 or 70 if people know somebody or has contracted the virus themselves. But think about the 60% number for a minute, Conan. These are people right now, this virus pandemic is an economic crisis for them. Pure and simple, not yet a health crisis. You got to figure out how to provide some blueprint for normalcy. That doesn't mean normalcy comes, but I think the need to show how it would work, let out a little bit of steam, maybe open parks, things like that. I think that's inevitable that you have to do something like that as a mayor or governor who has issued these shutdowns. But nobody also wants to rush out and be the first one, because if you have to tighten the valve again, I think the societal impact's worse. So this is why I think there's so much hesitance and, frankly, a little bit of consternation at the White House for being so vague on their guidelines and for providing zero support on the testing front.
In terms, though, of the response, what is the possibility that it will start to mirror the red state, blue state divide, not only in terms of states, but also in terms of the counties within states, such as this state overwhelmingly, of course, went for Hillary Clinton in 2016, but there were counties that went for Donald Trump. And so I'm just wondering, is it a possibility that the response and the effort to open up will mirror the political divide?
I think it will, but I would say my caveat is a little bit of the hotspot itself. I'd go back to those that know somebody who's gotten the virus and has dealt with it versus someone. I mean, look, even President Trump's attitude about the virus changed when he had a friend die. We saw it in real time, right? We saw that it sort of changed his own attitude. You just, frankly, I had somebody I knew pretty well get it that was my age and had a really rough time with it in ICU. So, you know, it sort of sobers you up if you haven't been sobered up by it already. And so I do think that matters. But without it, I think, look, the president himself's goading the red-blue divide. He's going after governors in battleground states that are Democrats that he needs to carry. He's yet to criticize a governor with a stay-at-home order that's a Republican, be it a Mike DeWine in Ohio or a Larry Hogan in Maryland.
At 9 o'clock, we're going to be talking to a couple of old chums of yours, Bob Shrum and Mike Murphy. They're ready, because this is the line of work you're in, to handicap the political possibilities for some of the folks that have been at the forefront of this. Everybody's been talking about the governor of New York, but the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has not only gotten high marks, certainly according to the polling in this state, but he's gotten it right. I mean, there's far fewer deaths per capita in this state than there is in New York State. From the East Coast perspective, I know we're 3 hours later, and we don't get the attention that the governor of New York does. Right. What is your assessment of how Gavin Newsom's done?
I think that there's no doubt that he's going to be considered one of the governors that got it right and got it right early. He's been very decisive. If he's waffled, he's not let it shown in public. He's been pretty clear. Look, I've never thought being the governor that had to follow Jerry Brown was never going to be easy. And Gavin Newsom, for the longest time, has always sort of been, there was this perception he was kind of a lightweight, and I think some of that came from the fact that he just wasn't Jerry Brown. I can tell you this, I think the word lightweight and Gavin Newsom will never be used in the same sentence again. I do think he is changed his perception nationally on the East Coast in a very big way.
And some have suggested that for the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, not that he welcomes a crisis like this, but it certainly got off the homeless crisis that has potentially been his legacy.
That's interesting. I think that, look, I think that, and speaking of the homeless issue, I do think the societal to-do list has surfaced in a big way. And I will say this, California in general has been more aggressive at trying to tackle some of those societal to-do lists, even though the homeless issue has been something that they've not had success with. But I do think that California-style governance is going to be even more influential, at least on the left side of the political spectrum, I think, going forward, because of I think where the Democratic Party's headed. So for a lot of these reasons, I think just California politicians in general are going to be back on the national radar in the Democratic Party in a bigger way, and I think this pandemic accelerates that a bit.
Who's on the program?
I'll be speaking with the Vice President on the new guidelines and on the testing issue in particular, and then two governors in the Midwest, Republican Mike DeWine and Democrat Gretchen Whitmer.
Good luck and stay safe.
You too.
Meet the Press airs every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, followed by NBC4's News Conference. We will be talking with Mike Murphy and Bob Shrum about Gavin Newsom and Eric Garcetti, plus an assessment of California's economy from the leader of the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation. And a Caltech neuroscientist talks about how our brains are not hardwired for this intersection of a pandemic and the communications age. That's News Conference at 9 o'clock following Meet the Press. See you then.